90 Days, 90 Reasons. Number 46 is written by Whitney Pastorak. She is a writer and a photographer whose work appeared in the New York Times, Sports Illustrated, ESPN, and The Village Voice, among many others. She was a writer on staff at Entertainment Weekly for 6 years and is a current regular contributor to Fast Company. Her reason is as follows. Obama signed legislation to protect consumers from predatory lending practices of credit card companies. I'd like to burp too. But I'd like to focus on a specific piece of legislation Obama signed in his first 4 years that I believe reflects quite clearly upon his character as a leader who deserves a second term. The Credit Card Accountability, Responsibility, and Disclosure Act of 2009, or the Credit Card Act. In a nutshell, this bill protects consumers. It bans unfair rate increases. Whoops, your interest rate is now 49%. And unfair free traps. Whoops, did we mention your payment was, or unfair fee traps? Did we mention your payment was due on a different day this month? It requires fine print to be in legible English rather than lawyerly gibberish, and it requires fine print to be accessible on the internet instead of only in the weird brochures everybody throws away. It also curbs the marketing of credit cards directly to students. I like to call this the Joe the Camel Memorial provision, or what did I do with that free sweatshirt anyway? And best of all, it eliminates the dreaded double bill cycle. Why do these things matter so much? Well, 80% of American families have a credit card and 44% carry a balance. Average credit card debt is close to $5,000 nationwide and $15,000 among indebted households. While some people may have run up their balance buying those nefarious big screen TVs, a recent study by the Consumer Federation of America and the Certified Financial Planner Board of Standards states that 38% of Americans, myself included, live paycheck to paycheck, making a line of credit essential for navigating emergencies and bridging the gap between what we make and what we need, always hoping to catch up someday. Unfortunately, to paraphrase Elizabeth Warren, the system was rigged against us. The history of the credit card is fascinating, and I didn't know much about it until I started researching. A few special moments stick out. Like when the first general-purpose credit cards appeared in the late 50s, banks would simply mail them to people. None of this mamby-pamby, you're pre-qualified letter nonsense that keeps the U.S. Postal Service in business these days. They just send the damn thing out, and you could go spend money you didn't have right then and there. Yikes. I also never really understood why many credit cards came from Delaware and South Dakota until I learned that those states elected to trash their usury laws in the 1980s, eliminating any cap on interest rates in order to attract much-needed jobs from the credit card issuing corporations. Usury is a fun word to look up on the internet, because while lending money has existed since the dawn of society, it seems the practice of charging interest has a long history of condemnation in many cultures. And who can forget the whole Jesus Temple money changer business? He got real pissed at the dudes who were running up hidden fees and charging poor people exorbitant interest. And if Jesus didn't like it, then chances are it's probably wrong. But these are modern times, and banks have to do whatever it takes in order to stay ahead of inflation if they want to make a buck. Many of these profit-driven activities were given a splendid moniker of predatory lending practices, and for whatever reason, and despite the word predatory being right there in the name, they were accepted as a part of the game. Jacking up interest rates to crazy percentages is a pretty easy way to grow profits. So, in coming up with the convoluted, ever-fluctuating fee policies designed to intentionally take advantage of people who did not read the fine print. Look, no one reads the fine print. No one ever has. But taking advantage of people in general is usually frowned upon. So why has it taken so long to put an end to it, at least in this arena? Best as I can figure, it has something to do with, one, the immense power wielded over our political process by the well-heeled men and women of the financial services industry, and two, some sort of ingrained belief that anyone who gets themselves into debt in the first place probably deserves what's coming to them. So, if you will, a personal story. Despite my long history as a bleeding-heart, tree-hugging liberal, I am the daughter of a proud fiscal Republican, and I grew up with a clear understanding of financial responsibility. After my first teenage automobile incident, T-boning another completely stationary car in my own driveway at 16, I was taught very quickly that the way you pay off your debts is by getting a job, working your ass off until those debts are paid. That lesson, however, did not help me whatsoever with the real world. I got into severe credit card debt immediately after graduating from college in 1996. I worked my ass off and it still took me 15 years to get out. Much of that struggle was thanks to an artistically low income coupled with an insistence on living in New York City. But a good portion of it had to do with all the months I spent making minimum payments that barely covered the accrued interest from the previous month. I didn't read the fine print and my rates ballooned. I missed payments and faced impossible fees. I took advantage of gifts and discounts and bonus points and lots of other shiny things that the nice people gave me when I opened a new line of credit, all of which bit me right in the ass. Every provision of the Credit Card Act of 2009 would have directly improved my life had it been in place during those years. And I am so thankful on behalf of those people whose lives it is improving now. Credit is supposed to be a part of a safety net, one that catches us when we fall. And far too often in recent years, people have found themselves dropping through that net, landing beneath it, and looking up to find that it's almost possible to climb back on top. I empathize with how trapped they feel. I lived my own version of it and swore I'd never go back until this summer when I faced both an emergency room visit and a broken down car. I suddenly rejoined the ranks of the indebted. Thanks in part to the actions of President Obama and his first term administration. However, I know there's far less chance I'll stay there this time. The Credit Card Act was a real change that gives me hope, and I suspect there's more where that came from. I'm looking forward to it. I hope you'll join me. Whitney Pastoric, Los Angeles, California. Reason number 46.